Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
welcome back to my channel, and today we have another installment in my series where I rank all of the Gossip Girl love interests. And today we're going to be talking about Vanessa, and she has 6 love interests across the 4/5 seasons that she's in. I think it might just be 4 seasons actually. Anyway, so we're going to talk about those today. And for this Gossip Girl series, we are going to be doing Blair, Serena, Nate, Chuck, Dan, Vanessa, and Jenny. So make sure you check out my playlist of all the ones that I've done so far. And then at the end, once I've completed all of them individually, I will be ranking all of them. Yes, all of the relationships in Gossip Girl, which I think is going to be even more than my video where I ranked all of the Pretty Little Liars relationships, and there was like 90 of those. So make sure that you subscribe and look forward to that one as well. I feel like Vanessa's love interests aren't, her relationships aren't my favorite throughout the show. I know that Vanessa is a very polarizing character. She doesn't have that many fans. I have moments where I like Vanessa and moments where I don't, but I think overall her relationships to me feel quite underwhelming. Yeah, this list was pretty easy to make compared to the others where I feel like I have a lot to talk about, but I still wanted to talk about her anyway because she does have 6, and I feel like, you know, Vanessa, she usually gets left out. So we're going to talk about her today. And coming in at number 6, we have Paul. And I feel like it's going to be like, who even are these people? Paul was who Vanessa was dating in season 3 when she started at NYU. She started dating this guy, Paul, who was a drama student, I think, at the Tisch school.
And the theme was fairy tales, so it's only appropriate that I met my Prince Charming.
I don't remember liking his character that much. Hopefully I'm thinking of the right guy, because if I'm not, I'm just slandering this poor man. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of his, and it really felt like towards the end, she was obviously kind of just dating him to avoid her feelings for Dan. And then they end up going on this double date with Paul and Vanessa and Dan and Willa. And that's when Dan and Vanessa realize that they do want to be together. So Paul is very short-lived. I wasn't a huge fan of him, and I just felt like they didn't really have any chemistry. There was no, oh, maybe she should be with this guy instead of Dan because he was kind of boring. Is that harsh? I'm sorry, Paul. I'm sorry to this man. Coming in at number 5, we have Scott. And if you remember him or you don't remember him, I honestly wouldn't blame you because the show literally tries to make you forget that he even existed because they do not mention him past season 2, I think it is. The man disappears, never to be heard from again. Scott came into it as Rufus and Lily's child that Lily had given up for adoption years and years ago. Scott kind of worms his way into the Humphrey clan via Vanessa when he meets them in a cafe, and they kind of like connect over the summer and they sort of start dating. She's not really sure where it's going, and then they end up kissing and actually dating properly. And then he meets Rufus through obviously being Vanessa's boyfriend, and she is also the first one to find out that he is Rufus's son. So she's very intertwined in that story, and I feel like the main focus of that whole plot line was the fact that he was Rufus's son and not the fact that he was dating Vanessa. That was definitely kind of took a back seat to that whole thing, but she did really seem to like him. And it was quite sad when they broke up and she had to say goodbye to him. And then, yeah, he like came back and they didn't really rekindle their relationship or anything. And then he literally just disappears from the show entirely. And I don't know, I thought they were fine. Again, there is just not a lot of investment put into a lot of Vanessa's relationships, so I feel like it's also hard for us as the audience to get invested in them. But for this one, I feel like Scott was okay. He never really seemed to prioritize her, and also they kind of started off their relationship with him lying to her about who he was, which is really a good foundation for a relationship. Hello. Hello. We're not giving you enough attention. Is that what's happening? Is that what's happening? Yes. Little bit better than Paul, but the bar is quite low. At number 4, we have Chuck. And this was kind of short-lived, but honestly, when I get to this point in the series, I kind of like it.
It means nothing.
What means nothing?
I think they had pretty good chemistry. I think that was because Ed, who plays Chuck, and Jessica, who plays Vanessa, actually did date in real life. I don't know if it was the exact time that they played a couple, but they did date in real life, so that kind of natural chemistry was there, and I did think their characters bounced off of each other really well, especially because Vanessa had that more grounded and down-to-earth view of things, and Chuck was obviously the richest person on the Upper East Side, and the whole way that they were brought together by it was a scheme, but then he actually did want to save this bar that she was trying to save, and that actually I thought was quite sweet, that she actually then started to look past the kind of Chuck Bass persona, and she saw how Bart treated him and was able to kind of empathize with him on that. And I thought that that was really nice because we hadn't had a lot of characters really delve deeper into Chuck at that point that weren't, you know, Belair. So it was kind of nice to see him opening up to other characters on the show. And they end up sleeping together just once. Well, no, they end up sleeping together twice, but in the same night. So they have kind of like a one-night stand. They don't actually end up dating or anything like that. And Vanessa kind of really regrets it afterwards and then drunkenly confesses to Dan that it happened. So I don't know, I feel like maybe, you know, in another life, in another universe, they maybe could have worked. At the time they were both jealous because Blair and Nate were kind of getting back together, and obviously Chuck loved Blair and Vanessa loved Nate, so that was kind of fueled through that. But I wouldn't have been mad if they'd maybe reconnected in the show or had dated for a little while after that. That would have been kind of interesting to see Vanessa really in that world, because when she was with Nate, she kind of was starting to, but then she went on to date Dan, who, as we know, his whole thing is not really being involved in that world. Whereas I think going to events and things as Chuck's girlfriend rather than Dan's would have been an interesting perspective. But I definitely don't think they would have lasted in the long run. But I think it would have been good TV. And at number 3, I have one which might just be me being a little bit delulu and more of like a kind of couple I wish would have happened. And at number 3, I have Olivia Burke. Okay? And look, did they show any real romantic interest in each other? No. And I think that's just because the writers were cowards, because this could have been the lesbian representation that we are missing from Gossip Girl. There's like some LGBT representation. Obviously we have Eric, but outside of Eric and the boyfriends that he has, which is literally just 2 or 3, we don't get much else. So I think having Vanessa be bisexual would have been a good piece of representation to have in the show. I mean, they kind of hint that Chuck is, but not to a huge extent. So I think that would have been a nice piece of representation, while also actually having really good chemistry, because they, obviously Olivia Burke, played by Hilary Duff, she starts out as Dan's girlfriend, and then she, Dan, and Vanessa end up having a threesome together. And now this leads to Dan and Vanessa realizing that they have feelings for each other, and Olivia kind of bows out and says to Dan, I know that you're in love with Vanessa. I think it would have been interesting for then Vanessa and Olivia to realize that maybe they had feelings for each other, because they were roommates and they were quite good friends. So I think that would have been just a kind of fun, interesting storyline. And I thought they actually had really good chemistry in the show. Easily better than Olivia and Dan did. I think Vanessa and Dan did have good chemistry. They definitely did. But I think that would have been a more interesting pairing, and one that maybe could have gone the distance a bit more. I don't know if maybe Hilary Duff was like, I'm only going to do a few episodes, but maybe, I don't know, if in the future, if Vanessa had stayed, if they had reconnected, or if that was kind of where she was in the 5-year time jump, I would not have been mad at that. Coming in at number 2, I have Mr. Dan Humphrey, because I mean, who else was going to be the top 2? I think you know who number 1 is after, now that I've said Dan.
Just sitting here with you is the most romantic date I can imagine.
So Vanessa and Dan, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them, because there are points where I actually really liked them together, especially when they first got together. The sexual tension between them and their bond and their friendship did make for quite a sweet relationship in the beginning. And I wasn't mad that they had gotten together. I think it was kind of one of those things that was like, okay, when's this going to happen? Like, it's going to happen at some point. But for me, the reason that he's not number 1 is a couple of things. Because I feel like the top 2 had to be the top 2, because they're the only like true established relationships for Vanessa. But even though I thought her and Dan had really good chemistry, I don't like when there becomes that jealousy between them. I mean, a lot of it is on Dan's part about Vanessa's success and her getting into the Tisch writing program and these kind of rules that he makes for her. And I didn't really like that element of their relationship. And then ultimately, I think their relationship then leads to the downfall of their friendship. And I much preferred them as friends to dating. I did like them as a couple, but I think the fact that them being a couple made us lose their friendship was quite sad, because that is a really nice part, I think, of the first 2 seasons. And for it to go from like friends to lovers to enemies in the end is not really the journey I would have liked for them to go on, or how I would have liked Vanessa to have left the show. But that is unfortunately what we got. So I think they had huge potential. I wouldn't have been that mad if they ended up being Endgame, to be honest. I don't know, I'll get into it in the Serena and Dan ranking videos when I talk about Dan and Serena, but I love them a lot. I think as a second choice, Vanessa, if they hadn't made it very weird and complicated in season 4, would have also been a good choice. Because like I said, I think the chemistry was there. I liked their characters together, but it then ruined their friendship. And I think that's why I had to put it at number 2. And of course, that only leaves one love interest left, and that is Golden Boy Nate Archibald. He is my number 1. And to be honest with you, I actually really liked Vanessa and Nate together.
I come bearing snacks, hoping that we can cuddle on the couch and watch ESPN.
Come here.
You're watching The Age of Innocence?
It's heartbreaking.
I think in the first season, when they get together, they are so cute. Their chemistry is so good. And, oh, you're leaving. She was like, I can't believe you put Nate in first place. She's a Nate and Serena stan, clearly. I actually really liked them together. I liked that it was the show's way of kind of bringing her into the Upper East Side. I also really liked that they didn't have her date Dan straight away, because obviously Dan was with Serena. So actually getting to have them just be friends and have her date Nate as her kind of first love interest was really sweet. I mean, he helped her. She helped him with the SATs, and he was the one that encouraged her to take the test so that she could then go to NYU. And I really liked them together. I think when they falter for me, and this is going to be no surprise to anybody that watches this channel, I love Jenny Humphrey. I'm a Jenny Humphrey ride or die. So when Vanessa and Nate got in the way of my girl Jenny Humphrey, that was when I went off of them a little bit. But outside of that, I think just them as a couple, like, they were really sweet. I thought it was a real shame that the reason they ended was because Nate ended up choosing his grandfather and that side of things over Vanessa and just didn't even really tell her about it, because I think if he had spoken to her, they would have been able to work it out. And I think she was really surprised that he had done that. And then he just kind of decided that it was over, and she was like, we haven't even spoken about this, and that was weird. That was really weird. The whole thing happens with Jenny, which I really didn't like the fact that they ended up fighting over Nate, when Vanessa and Jenny's friendship was something that I really liked about the show. So that was kind of a shame. And then they ended up breaking up anyway. Then they do end up like sleeping together, I think, when they went backpacking together across the summer of season 2 to season 3. But that is the last time that they really interact. We don't see much from them after that. But I did like that they always supported each other, and Vanessa was there for Nate with everything that happened with his dad. And yeah, I did think they were really sweet when they were together, especially in season 1. And I think he was definitely the best match for her out of everyone that they kind of put her with. And I'm sorry, I know people are going to say no to Vanessa. But if Vanessa had been Nate's endgame, I also wouldn't have minded that, if everything hadn't gone as sour as it did in season 4. Because if they had broken up like they did in season 2, and then we had kind of just left it, and things had gone on, she dated Dan, but then they'd broken up and everything was fine, and maybe they had rekindled later, I would have been okay with that. I think the fact that Nate ends up single is fine, because I guess somebody had to end up single. But if he was going to end up with somebody and it wasn't going to be Serena or Jenny, I think Vanessa would have been a fine choice. They always seem to bring out a good side of each other, and I did think their relationship was really sweet while we did have it. And they also looked incredible together. They were absolutely gorgeous couple. So yeah, that is my kind of short rundown of all of Vanessa's love interests. I think just because, like I said, they aren't that fleshed out and we don't really see that many of them. This is not as long as some of my other ones, but let me know down in the comments who was your favourite with Vanessa. I know that a lot of people don't like Vanessa, so maybe you didn't like her with anybody. But yes, let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.